United established the first and some of the toughest rules around vaccinations amidst the airline industry last year, saying that workers had to be vaccinated or they would face termination. But now it seems that the airline has had a change of heart. For more on this and the rules around work and vaccines in this new era of COVID is labor lawyer Angela Reddock-Wright. Angela, it is so great to have you back with us. It feels like it has been forever and a day.
Indeed, it's wonderful to rejoin you.
So just to kind of set the scene here, come next week, United is saying unvaccinated workers can come back to work. Of course, we've all been reading there has been a pretty steep decline of COVID cases. What do you make of this decision and this news?
Well, I think it definitely speaks to the times, and it's probably a decision that many businesses and organizations have been waiting for essentially the last 2 years. They've had to develop rules and policies to understand exactly how to navigate this COVID-19 pandemic era. And so we know there's been the Great Resignation. We know companies have had trouble getting people back to work, and that many have had fears of returning to work, and that the policies and the regulations that have been in place have allowed folks to stay out of work for this time period. So now that those regulations are being lifted, companies like United and across the board are making the decision to bring folks back and not to hold them to the same standards and policies that we've seen in place the last 2 years.
Oh, you just brought up so much that I want to dig into with you, because I mean, it seems to me like businesses are really faced with very competing interests. As you mentioned, right, their employees are like, I don't know if I want to come back to work. I don't know if I feel safe there, but I'm assuming probably taking precedence over that a lot of times is the Great Resignation and the current labor shortage. Do you feel like, because a business can't do business if they don't have the people to do so, do you think that's been maybe one of the big drivers that employers are considering right now as they maybe roll back some of their vaccine policies?
No, for sure. I mean, whether we go to a restaurant or whether we're traveling, we see the impact of the worker shortage across the board. So I think businesses at this point, they're willing to take some steps and sacrifice safety issues, so to speak, in the interest of trying to get businesses back on track, to get the economy moving again, and getting the workers that they need to service their customers and their clients and to keep things moving forward.
Yeah. I look back at that video that we showed from United, you know, that was in the summer of 2020 before we even had vaccines, and so much has changed now. Not only are COVID cases on the decline, as we mentioned, but we've also learned that while vaccines are fantastic at doing things like preventing severe illness and hospitalization and death, we also know that people can and do get COVID even if they're vaccinated, even if they're boosted. Do you think, Angela, that that might also be influencing some of these decisions? Like, why are we maybe making such a big deal about this, potentially facing litigation if they still might get COVID, even with the vaccine?
Yes, indeed. And I think individuals as well as companies have come to the point where we're almost accepting that COVID and the different strains of COVID and even future pandemics may be things that we have to live with. And so we have to learn how to live with it, how to keep working, how to keep living. And when looking back in 2020, businesses weren't sure like what the risks would be, what the potential liabilities will be, and they still don't know for sure. In my work, I'm starting to see lawsuits come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think businesses are waiting to see exactly what the potential fallout will be, but they're making the decision that we can't wait to understand the fallout while sacrificing continuing to do business now. And so they're taking what I call a calculated business risk by bringing people back to work.
Tell me more about those lawsuits. I mean, I know there's certain things that you can disclose, but I have a feeling there's probably a lot of legal wranglings behind the scenes given where we're at right now. What kind of cases are you seeing and hearing about?
Right. Well, so I'm a mediator. I'm an attorney, but I'm a mediator. So I spend my days helping employers and employees resolve their cases, either pre-litigation or pre-lawsuit or in the middle of the lawsuit. And what I'm seeing come across my desk as a mediator are employees, for example, who possibly contracted COVID during the pandemic, and they're arguing that their employers did not provide them the proper accommodation or the proper leave, or perhaps they were terminated after announcing that they had COVID, so they're filing wrongful termination lawsuits. There's a good friend of mine, Jim DeSimone. He just filed a lawsuit against the county of Riverside on behalf of a family of someone who died of COVID, arguing that had this particular county office provided the necessary safety precautions, that their loved one would not have passed. Wow. And as a result of that, the county not providing those certain provisions, that their loved one passed of COVID when they didn't have to, and that other members of the family contracted COVID, and it's now impacted them and their ability to work and to provide a living for their family. So there's still many new cases and theories that I'm sure we're going to see, but those are some of the ones that we're starting to see right now.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And talking about, providing safety for workers, I mean, I feel like some of that stuff is fairly straightforward. And there was a period of time where the rule was, employers, you've got to have, the KN95 masks for folks at work. Vaccinations are trickier, right? Because we've talked about this with other legal experts on this show. As much as some folks would like to know exactly which of their colleagues are vaccinated and which aren't, there are privacy issues. What is that looking like in this current chapter of the pandemic?
Exactly. Well, companies like United are making the decision that they're not going to even ask if an employee has been vaccinated or not vaccinated. But to the extent companies, organizations, even cities, I saw today that the city of Los Angeles, I believe, terminated about 20 or so individuals who still declined to be vaccinated. But so for those who are still requiring vaccinations, certainly they have to keep that information private. They can't let other employees know whether someone's been vaccinated or not. And in some instances, they cannot make vaccination a condition of continuing to work in that employment environment, particularly if the employee is able to establish that for medical reasons, they cannot be vaccinated. But I think employers are growing tired and weary of managing who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated. And many of them, especially with the regulations now not requiring it, many of them are just saying, we don't care about your vaccination status. We're going to do our best to try to create a safe environment. But everyone on some level is essentially on their own and taking a risk when they come to work. But if you need a job and if you need to work, then, we're here to provide that opportunity for you.
We just have a few moments left, but on a scale of 1 to 10, if you look at workplace law from here on out, 1 being not that much, 10 being incredibly, how much of an impact would you say COVID-19 has had on labor law here in California?
Oh my goodness, absolute 10 plus, not just in California, but across the country and throughout the world. I don't think any employer, even those that have the best emergency preparedness plans, were really prepared for what this last 2+ years has provided and it has caused in the workplace. In fact, I have a book coming out called The Workplace Transformed, the 7 lessons we can learn from the COVID pandemic.
Boom, there's the plug. We have to let you go now, Angela, but we will bring you back when that book is out. Thank you so much.